Eating before swimming doesn't cause cramps. Everyone knows that you have to wait at least 30 minutes after eating to go swimming. If you don't, you might cramp up, or even worse, sink. This is actually not true. Our bodies are perfectly adapted to swim while full. If you do happen to get a cramp while in the pool for any reason, just relax and float. You'll be feeling fine soon enough. Handling a toad or frog won't give you warts. Warts are caused by a certain virus, which is only carried by humans. The myth came about because of the bumpy, wart-like skin texture of toads and tree frogs. Frogs might not give you warts, but they could still be poisonous, so you shouldn't handle them. You don't accidentally eat 8 spiders a year while sleeping. This old myth doesn't have a leg, or 8 legs, to stand on. Most people sleep with their mouths closed, so in the unlikely event that a spider actually made it to your face, it wouldn't even have the opportunity to go into your mouth. If you sleep with your mouth open though, you're most likely snoring, which creates vibrations strong enough to scare any spiders away.
Dropping a penny from the Empire State Building can obliterate a person below. Myth. While the penny won't tickle, it will not damage anyone on the ground. Simply, the penny can't build up enough speed while it's tumbling to the ground. Better to just keep the change in your pocket. The moon has a dark side. Myth. No, the moon isn't going to use the force to rule. Our satellite is tidally locked with the Earth, meaning that we're always looking at one side. But there's no permanent dark side. Leenex was originally designed for gas masks. True. Yeah, Kimberly-Clark originally designed a thin cotton substitute to be used as a filter. In 1924, Leenex began selling in the US as a cold cream and makeup remover, eventually turning into the soft tissues we love today. Water is extremely rare in the universe. Both of the elements water consists of are among the most abundant stuff in the universe. We think water is scarce only because we rarely found it on our neighboring planets. But science proposes there are lots of huge worlds having up to half of their mass as water. To compare, our planet's mass is only 0.02% water. All comets have tails. In reality, comets are almost invisible before they get close to the star and their tails appear. This tail consists of ice scattering away when the comet gets closer to the heat of the star. If the comet isn't heated, it won't have a tail. The void of space is cold. Space isn't just cold, it's extremely cold. Minus 454 degrees Fahrenheit, nothing a sweater can save you from. But relatively close to the sun, it gets up to 250 degrees. This is also why spacesuits are white. They need to reflect as much light and heat as possible.
Swallowed gum won't stay in you for 7 years. You should definitely avoid swallowing gum. That's not something that's good for you. But just in case you do by accident, you'll be happy to learn that it won't stay inside your body for 7 years. You can't fully digest the gum, but all that happens is that gum leaves your body naturally in a matter of days. Our tongues don't have different sections for tasting. There's no bitter, sweet, sour, umami, or salty sections of our tongue whatsoever. This giant muscle can taste everything all over, so you don't have to worry about keeping specific foods in specific parts of your mouth. Fingerprints might not be unique. Sounds terrifying, doesn't it? Well, the reasoning is actually very simple. We can't check every fingerprint on Earth, so it's difficult to know if they really are unique to each individual. Related people can have somewhat similar fingerprints, and there are over 7 billion people on the planet, so it's almost impossible to check.
If you've ever poked a turtle's shell thinking it won't hurt the guy inside, you'd be wrong. A turtle's shell is a living and feeling part of its body, with a complete nerve ending supply. If the shell gets damaged, it can even endanger the turtle's life. There was a time when people thought that unwashed hair was the ideal habitat for head lice. But head lice don't discriminate, No, they can make themselves a home in all hair types. All they really want is a warm scalp. Most people are familiar with the phrase, "an apple a day keeps the doctor away." Apples are good for you, sure. They're packed with nutrients like fiber and vitamin C. But does anyone really think that's enough? When it comes to food hygiene, the 5-second rule just doesn't make sense. There should be a "where you drop it" rule to replace the 5-second one. Generally, if you drop food on your kitchen floor, it's going to pick up fewer bacteria than if you drop it at the checkout counter of a busy supermarket. Of course, that's assuming your kitchen's clean. Uh-oh. Legend has it that catching a cold is likelier to happen in cold weather. But studies have shown that weather doesn't really play a part in getting a cold. A virus does. People may experience more cold-like symptoms when the weather is icy cold, but temperature has nothing to do with recovery time or anything like that. Do people only use 10% of their brains? Well, I have some friends who seem to, never mind. No, the answer is no. Scientists who've studied brain scans say they don't show any large dormant areas of the brain. But if the myth is just about humans having a long way to go to reach their full potential, yeah, that sounds about right. Does shaved hair grow back darker and thicker? Researchers say it doesn't. But shaving does give your hair a blunt tip, which can make it feel thicker. When it comes to color, that new, darker stubble is just an illusion. Some people are convinced that eating turkey leaves them feeling drowsy. It's true that turkey has a chemical that can cause drowsiness, but so does chicken or beef. Turkey's a favorite for those massive family celebrations, so that drowsiness, it's probably due to the huge amount you ate. The myth that people lose most of their body heat through their heads was probably first invented by a hat salesman. Not surprising. Scientists say that people lose only about 10% of their body heat through their heads. You lose heat through your skin, no matter where that skin is. Have you heard the saying that a full moon can affect your mind somehow? And no, but researchers believe that light from a full moon can affect your sleep, which can affect your mood. No number before 1,000 contains the letter A. True. Now you can try and spell each number out if you like, but I bet you're just going to take my word for it. The Guinness Book of World Records was created to settle arguments. True. The world's best trivia book was published in 1955 after an argument about the fastest game bird in Europe. The managing director of Guinness Brewery realized there wasn't a go-to book for trivial questions, so he created his own, and the rest is history. You're eating real wasabi. Myth. When you're sitting down for tasty sushi, that green paste sometimes isn't wasabi, it's horseradish. Real wasabi is very expensive with a milder taste to it. If it's not made in front of you, it's not going to be the real thing. So there. Now, as much as we love epic space battles with blasters cutting through the black void and causing cheerful booms, that's not exactly what happens when something explodes in the big black. Space is basically vacuum, meaning it has no oxygen, and oxygen is an essential part of any process of burning we have here on Earth. You might argue that stars can burn and explode into supernova, but that's not exactly true either. Stars don't rely on oxygen, so they're not burning. There are constant thermonuclear reactions going on inside them. So a spaceship can only explode like that if it has a nuclear power plant installed in it. If it doesn't, then the only special effect you get is a brief flash that disappears in the blink of an eye. Liquid oxygen, which is often on board spaceships, is very quick to burn out in the vacuum of outer space. As for the boom, oxygen plays a crucial role here too. Sound only travels thanks to molecules of air bumping into each other. Since there's no air in space, the whole scene would be pretty much absolutely silent. And that's not a bad thing either. Just imagine how deafening would the sun be if the sound could travel in space. While things appear weightless in outer space, there's actual gravity all over the place. It becomes weaker the further you get from a heavy object, like our planet, but it's still there. In fact, there's not a single place in the universe that isn't affected by gravity of this or that cosmic object. Everything that has mass has gravity as well. Yes, even you and me. But space objects are so massive that they tug smaller things towards them. That's why the planets of the solar system orbit around the Sun, and our whole Milky Way galaxy orbits around its own center. Scientists believe there's a supermassive black hole there, about 4 million times heavier than the Sun, which keeps all the stars and systems from flying apart.
Fresh fruits and veggies aren't superior to frozen. Having fresh instead of frozen produce might seem like a no-brainer, but the choice isn't actually so simple. By the time that juicy mango or crisp carrot gets to your local store, it's actually been through a lot. Most fresh produce travels on trucks or ships or planes and gets processed. Once it arrives, it's often covered in pesticides in order to keep it fresh. Now, on the other hand, frozen fruits and vegetables are immediately frozen, keeping all their nutrients and minerals preserved. If you can grow your own produce, though, you can guarantee freshness. Lightning can strike the same spot more than once. This myth has been around for a very long time, and it's just simply not true. Lightning will strike whatever is attracting it, however many times it can. This means that in many cases, it's more likely to strike twice. Just watch the Empire State Building during a lightning storm. It gets hit more than 100 times every year.
Weekend sleep-ins will help you catch up on lost sleep. That's a myth. As comfy as your bed is on a Sunday morning, you just can't make up for lost sleep. Irregular sleep can lower your concentration and performance. If you're refreshed when you wake up, you've had the right amount. Zombies are real. True. Now, no human has ever turned into a hungry zombie that we're shown so much in the movies, but they do exist in the animal kingdom. A fungus that has a really long name I don't want to pronounce takes over ants with its chemicals. Under the control of the fungus, the ant leaves its family to find a very specific branch or leaf. Then it lets the fungus sprout out of it and release spores back into the world. How delightful. The largest living organism is the blue whale, African elephant, or shag. Myth. While all of those are large, the honey fungus in the Blue Mountains, Oregon wins by quite a bit. With the length of 3.4 miles, that's 6.5 Burj Khalifas end to end, and it's still growing. But on the bright side, it's edible. Mushroom omelet, anyone? Turkeys can blush. True. Just like humans, turkeys blush when excited, angry, or sick. The skin on their heads and necks can turn red or even a shade of blue. The fleshy flap of skin that hangs over their neck is called a snood. It also turns bright red when the bird is excited. Maybe not at Thanksgiving, though. The vacuum of space is absolutely empty. Well, despite having little or no matter in it, the vacuum is actually filled with energy fields interacting with each other. They can even produce particles. Gas giants are made of gas. Seems obvious. I mean, planets like Jupiter or Saturn are called gas giants, but they still have solid cores deep inside them, in theory at least, because it's impossible to study gas giants properly. Any probe would get smashed by immense pressure as soon as it gets too close. Super-Earth planets are like the Earth, but bigger. This term only describes the size. These planets are bigger than the Earth, but not as big as, let's say, Uranus or Saturn. Black holes swallow everything around them like colossal funnels. Black holes got their name because we can't see them directly. These are objects so massive and dense, their force of gravity works as a trap. Even light can't escape it. Other objects can orbit them like planets orbit the Sun. Still, if you get past the event horizon of a black hole, there's no turning back. We know how big the universe is. The furthest place from where light ever reached us was 13.8 billion light-years away from the Earth. But the universe is constantly expanding extremely fast. And if something was 13.8 billion light-years away from us, by now it's even farther away. Mercury is the hottest planet in the solar system. Mercury is closest to the Sun, but Venus is much hotter. Mercury has no atmosphere, while Venus has one. It mostly consists of CO2 that traps heat inside and adds to the high temperature.
Everest is the highest mountain in the world. Not really. The highest point in the world above sea level is indeed the peak of Mount Everest. It's more than 29,000 feet high. But if you take into account the distance from the foot to the top, Everest loses to volcano Mauna Kea. It's towering over the Hawaiian Islands. The mountain's top reaches a height of 13,800 feet above sea level, but its foot is under the water. From there to the peak, the distance is 32,800 feet, and this makes Mauna Kea the highest mountain on the planet. The North Star isn't the brightest object in the night sky. There are about 50 other blazing stars you can notice from Earth. For example, Sirius, also known as the Dog Star, looks much brighter compared to the North Star. Dogs don't release sweat to cool their body. Their coat would keep the sweat from evaporating. They regulate their body temperature through rapid breathing. A dog opens its mouth and sticks out its tongue to allow moisture to evaporate faster. And still, these animals do sweat. There are sweat glands on their paws, but the function of this sweat is not to thermoregulate, but to make the paws stickier. This way, they cling to the ground better. As for the moisture on the dog's nose, it doesn't only control body temperature. A wet nose captures the tiniest smell particles much better. It's not bad for your health to crunch your knuckles. There's no proof that it may lead to problems with your finger bones. The sound you hear in the process is made by a special organic fluid when it bursts into the gaps between the bones. When you crack your knuckles, you put pressure on your joints. Under this pressure, the liquid begins to bubble and makes crunching sounds, but it does no harm whatsoever. Bats do hunt their prey using echolocation, but they're not blind. They see the world in black and white because they don't have enough color receptors. And still, at night, they see better than people. But during the day, bats see almost nothing. That's where the myth about these animals being blind comes from.
Legend has it that if you run into a skunk, there's only one possible outcome. You're gonna stink for a while. But skunks prefer to flee from danger rather than spraying their magic juice around. That smelly spray's their last line of defense. Before that, they usually stomp their feet and slap their tails to ward off any danger. Did you know there's an alpha wolf in every pack? Except again, there isn't. Unlike captive wolves, wild wolves don't share this kind of social order. They live in family groups like humans, where the parents are the leaders and the little ones gotta do as they're told. There are bugs in your strawberry frappuccino. True. But not anymore. A dye made of ground-up tiny insects called cochineal bugs is used by many companies to make the color red. Starbucks stopped using bug red color in their strawberry frappuccinos in 2015. Firefighters use wetter water. True. To be more efficient at stopping fires, firefighters recently started adding certain chemicals to the water. The wetting agents reduce the surface tension of the water, making it easier to spread and soak into objects. Leave wasps alone and they'll leave you alone. Myth. While this works for bees, their cousins, the yellow jackets, will disagree. Known as one of the most bad-tempered wasps, they've been said to sting unprovoked, even if you just happen to walk by their nest. If you see wasps, give them a wide berth. As much as we want to believe in instant communication between spaceships and planets, it's not possible, at least not yet. Modern communication systems rely on radio signals that have a pretty slow speed compared to the vast expanses of space. It would take years for such a signal to travel even 1 light year, let alone hundreds and thousands. If you want to send a message to a galaxy far, far away, be prepared to wait a couple of millennia and then a couple more to receive a reply. On that note, space is not as crowded and full of events as is often shown on the silver screen. It's mostly a rather lonely place where planets, stars, and other objects are separated by billions of miles of nothingness. Even if you have a spaceship that can travel at the speed of light, most of the time you'll only see black void full of stars and planets far away. The distances are enormous out there, even between the closest objects. For a better understanding, the Moon, which you can see so well on a clear night, is about 239,000 miles away. It's like traveling around the Earth almost 10 times in a row.
Ostriches never hide their heads in the sand out of fear. This tactic wouldn't help them to protect themselves from other animals anyway. This myth appeared because people usually see an ostrich bending its head down toward the ground from a distance. That's why it seems that the head is hidden in the sand. In reality, these birds make small holes and use them as nests for their eggs. Several times a day, a bird may stick its head into this small burrow to turn the eggs over. This helps with better heat distribution. Also, when ostriches feel they're in danger, they either run away or fight. It's a myth that goldfish forget everything that happens to them after a few minutes. They have a good memory. Simple experiments that involved feeding these fish proved it. Goldfish can not only store information for several months, but also recall it after some time has passed. Not bad for a creature with a tiny brain, which is almost 400,000 times smaller than a human's. The Sahara isn't the biggest desert in the world. It takes second place. Its area is almost half the area of cold Antarctica. Dunes and heat are not the main features of a desert. It's defined by the amount of precipitation. And in Antarctica, it's just as scarce as in the Sahara. Most of this area is blanketed in wind-carved ice fields and rocky mountains covered with glaciers. It hardly ever rains there. The sugar that natural products contain is the same as the sugar in candies. Honey, fruit, and a granola bar affect your body in a similar way as high sucrose foods. The only difference is that there's more sugar in sweets.